Hey everyone, welcome to the 229th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an excellent show, albeit a bit brief, for you today. We are going to be talking about, another company listening to your recordings, plus tons of updates on the smart home front about who's partnering with whom, who has a new OS, who's taking a certain voice assistant off a certain not very useful or popular thermostat, and more. And for those of you who have smart speakers everywhere, we're going to tell you about a acoustical attack that can happen over them just to keep you up at night. Our guest this week is going to be Adam Smith. Not the Wealth of Nations economist who is also dead, but the director of marketing at LightPoint. He's going to be talking about the FIRA standard and what makes a good wireless tech. So if you're trying to evaluate wireless technologies, this is a good interview for you. And if you're just curious about FIRA and fine-ranging location, also a good interview. We're also going to hear from our sponsor, Nutanix, and we've got a lot more. So let's kick this show off with a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. The DigitalOcean Developer Cloud simplifies modern app creation by combining the power of simplicity, love for the developer community, an obsession with customer service, and the advantages of open source. IoT businesses love DigitalOcean for their simple, predictable, pay-as-you-go pricing for cloud infrastructure services. With flat rates across all data centers, DigitalOcean makes it easy to scale up and expand globally without being surprised by your cloud bill each month. Get started for free with a $50 DigitalOcean credit at do.co/Stacey. That's do.co/Stacey. Alrighty, Kevin. You know, the last couple shows we've kicked off with the news that, hey, insert tech company here listens to your voice recording for quality assurance and has contractors paid to do that. And this week we find out that, hey, Facebook's been doing it.
Insert Facebook here.
As we've been talking about it, the big issue was these things were going to contractors and people are listening to things that people thought only machines were listening to. I would say the other issue is that it's going to contractors and not employees because contractors have a little bit less, loyalty, I would say, to a company. So they may sign an NDA, but they may feel free to share the juicy bits with their friends, where an employee-employer relationship has a little bit more heft to it.
Right. Yeah, this was found out or reported by Bloomberg, and according to them, Facebook has told them that they actually stopped this practice about a week ago. So it's not that they're currently doing it. None of the companies are, I believe, doing it now that we've talked about, including Apple, Google, and Amazon. But yeah, some contractors, they even named the company Task Us was the name of the contractor. Some of those employees heard some rather vulgar conversations and other things they probably shouldn't have heard, and kind of spoke to Bloomberg anonymously on this. So the issue is that is gone because this isn't happening anymore, but it's nice to see that at least some of these companies are updating their terms of service to be explicit about transcription services, people could be listening, and so on. And Facebook does not have that in their terms of service yet, and I don't believe they've added it, so I'm not sure how they're going to handle that.
And I thought some companies, they would let you opt out, but they were still sending a small amount of their workloads over to contractors. I know Apple said they stopped, but I believe Google and Amazon still are, yes?
Google lets you opt out, and Amazon lets you opt out. Facebook doesn't let you opt out, but they have apparently stopped. In Facebook's case, I think it's a little more specific because this all started when they added voice transcription to Messenger. So you could have your voice chats transcribed, and whereas the other companies were doing it reportedly to verify that the voice services were working as expected, so to speak.
That is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, anytime we're going to have AI or any sort of computer do something for us, there's going to be a human in the loop eventually to check to make sure things are proceeding like they're supposed to. It's just basic oversight.
It's testing. I mean, you want to test that the system you've designed is working as intended.
Right. And it doesn't get weird, because
Right.
the thing we know about any sort of AI is, left to its own devices for long enough, it can get weird. See Deep Dream.
Well, actually, see our next topic.
Oh, excellent. You're right. All right, Kevin, you want to just keep going?
Sure. Let's keep going. The scariness continues. It's Amazon Recognition this time, which is Amazon's face analysis system that we've talked about previously. Some police agencies have actually used this. There's been a lot of debate over it because the facial recognition is not as accurate as Amazon would hope. It's definitely skewed when there are people of color that are being analyzed. So it's not a great thing in my opinion. But they have added, this makes it even scarier, they have added a new emotion that Amazon Recognition can detect: fear. And that's really fearsome. They've already been able to look for happy, sad, angry, surprised, disgusted, calm, and confused. And they've improved accuracy for those emotions, but now they've added fear. I just worry when a system can do this, how it will be used, I guess, against us.
Yeah. Or even just to manipulate us. I mean, It doesn't have to be malicious. It could just be manipulative, and that would be a problem.
Just to bring up a hot topic here in the States, you could have political ads, for example, and you could see if they drive fear with people or et cetera.
Oh, yeah. You sell fewer products with happy ads than you do with ads that engender fear. So there's that, but there's also things like, hey, if your phone or a nearby camera recognizes that you're sad, maybe it'll send you a coupon for an ice cream, even though maybe you don't want the ice cream, but you're sad and
it'll make you feel better.
And those kind of things, I think, are really insidious, I would say.
Insidious, good word.
Isn't it though? I bet we'll use that again.
I think we will.
That's where we're going with all of this. And I also would like to see, so this is just a little blog item from AWS, but when they talk about improving accuracy, I would like to see their percentages. So anytime you're dealing with something like this, you're getting a probability. Anytime you've got a machine learning kind of thing, you're getting, I'm 90-something% sure that this person is happy. I think we should start calling for that sort of information. I know that they're going to say it's proprietary and they don't want to talk about it, but I think that's actually really important, especially if we're going to be pulling this into service for policing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know that if someone says they're surprised or disgusted before that, like, oh, this facial recognition said they were disgusted and angry beforehand. I really think it's important, if we're going to decide that that's valid, that we get percentages about how sure the system is and how sure it is for men versus women, white people versus black people, all of that. That's just me thinking about down the road as a lawyerly figure, because I think that's going to color people's perceptions in a way that I don't think it's fair if it's not right.
Absolutely.
I feel like a 6-year-old. I don't think it's fair if it's not right. Really, Stacey? Is that what you think? So let's move on to some happier news.
Happy news. Yeah.
Brilliant. The light switches that are very expensive and become a point of integration for your entire smart home. They have now added native LifeX support. These are for the bright LifeX Wi-Fi bulbs and other bulbs. This is useful. So I tried Brilliant probably a year ago, and I had a really bad experience because they were really tricky to install. And then I had a Brilliant person come out and install a new panel for me. He even said it was tricky to install. They were going to work on that, he said. But when they were working properly, they were a little too much for me personally, but I could integrate all of my, I think it was my Nest and my Sonos, and I could actually do a lot from these light switches. It was a big upfront time investment, but for someone who wants to have, instead of it worked with Amazon Echo too, but it felt almost like having a Savant or a Control 4 system that you programmed yourself. It didn't have the AV functionality, but
this is probably not a switch for everybody because, as you said, it for you it was too much. I mean, it's got a touch screen, it's got sensors, and it's got some. Would you call them touch sliders, like to dim and things?
The sliders dim. They're capacitive touch sliders. And actually, one of the biggest UI complaints I had about those is sometimes you just want to slap a light switch and have it work. And this, you kind of had to get your finger in the groove. At the same time, I'm like, well, that's a pretty wimpy.
Oh, they're nice. Yeah, they're very contemporary, modern looking. And if you like that look, it's obviously larger than a regular switch because of that touchscreen and the divots for the dimming and the sensors.
If you have two, they become a whole home intercom. Or if you have them all over your home, they become a whole home intercom.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
I wouldn't want these in every room, is what I would say. But I'm intrigued because I opted for LifeX for colored bulbs versus you with Hue in your colored bulbs.
Oh, so maybe now's the time. How much are these? The Brilliant Light switches?
Okay, for a single switch control, which is essentially just the touchscreen, that is $299. When you go up to a 2-switch control, $349. 3 switches is $399, and 4 switches is $449.
These are not cheap.
No.
But they do act as this integration point. Again, they were too much for me.
Yeah, I mean, they work with a ton of stuff. It says connects to Sonos, Nest, Ring, Hue, Ecobee, built-in Madam A.
They're very nice.
Yeah.
Once you install them correctly, which I recommend you... that was tough. All right. Anyway, they have LifeX, so now Kevin may or may not buy them. I think they're a little too rich for Kevin's blood.
I think so. Considering I really only have one LifeX bulb, I think I'll pass.
Okay. Other partnerships or integrations. LG and Lumi. This is something from China and Korea, but LG and Lumi have collaborated to create AI-based smart home services. What does this mean? Well, first we should tell you who Lumi is. Kevin?
Yeah, Lumi is considered one of the largest IoT companies in China. It was founded in Shenzhen, which is like the electronics capital of the world, where everything is made, knocked off, bought, sold, etc. According to ZDNet, Lumi has sold 100 million devices as of the end of 2018. They've got smart sensors and gateways, so they've got a whole ecosystem. You and I, Stacey, we were like, who is this again? I mean, I've heard the name, but now I know I haven't seen the products. It's probably all China sales.
Yes, but broadly, I like this deal because it's like, hey, these two big companies have created automations that work automatically between their stuff. So you don't have to set it up. But if you have this Lumi sensor and you have the LG air conditioning unit, you can turn it on. So it basically uses that sensor as an external sensor for your air conditioning unit. This is cool in many ways because it makes the smart home easier for people. It's a bummer in the sense that, oh my gosh, you're going to have to rely on all of your device makers and appliance makers to decide to opt into integrations together, which, sigh, is going to take a while and has the possibility of going away, as we see with what will happen at the end of this month with Nest shutting down its Works with Nest program.
Right.
So,
you know, it's kind of interesting, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm wondering what Lumi's voice and smart speaker integrations are. Because it's China, I don't know, number one. But
Baidu.
Probably, but then again, here we have LG has integrated with Madam A in some tablets. They basically turn your tablet into a smart speaker Echo Show-like device. So, but you're probably right. I would imagine in China it's just Baidu, maybe not any Amazon integration.
Yeah,
and certainly not Google.
I thought you were going to ask if they have contractors listen to the audio from their transcriptions.
We'll add them to the list when they do.
Okay. And in a partnership breakdown, Cortana was removed from the glass thermostat. I don't know how many people bought this. It was a Johnson Controls glass GLAS thermostat. It was beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yes.
But it came with Microsoft Cortana and we were like, huh? What? And Johnson Controls then bought Lux Products, which is a smart home thermostats maker. And they've got deals with both Google and Amazon. And I'm sure that anybody who bought the glass would love for it to talk to Google or Amazon. And Microsoft is getting out of the smart home aspect of Cortana. She is going to be a digital assistant for the enterprise. So this totally makes sense.
If you have one of these, if you haven't been notified about this yet, the folks at Glass have said moving forward, you'll have other voice assistants through the Works With functionality of Madam A and Google. So
awesome. Another breakdown. we've been getting reports that the Google Home and Wink link, the Wink link is now weak. No, it's non-existent. Somewhere between those two clouds, there was a breakdown, and both Google and Wink thought it would be fixed, but so far, it hasn't been.
Right before we started this show recording, I tested mine again because I'd noticed it for about 3 days, and yeah, she says that I cannot connect to Wink right now.
That is a bummer, and be aware that both parties are aware of it, and they're working on it. It's a little disconcerting that they did think there would be a fix, and there isn't one yet, but...
Yeah, and what I'm doing in the meantime is I'm just using my Wink app.
Boo, getting out your phone. Okay.
It's always out anyway.
And another breakdown. Gosh, so many divorces. The TP-Link Casa system, which makes a line of wonderful smart home plugs, they are not going to get HomeKit support.
Yeah, and they said back in January that they were, so this is a total reversal at this point. It's not going to get the update, the Smart Plug Mini. I mean, it will get updates in the future, but it's not going to get an update that adds HomeKit support.
Right. So we are sad, or at least kind of flummoxed. Man, I feel like we're like TMZ or something like that. Like we're doing like this dating show. These guys are together. These guys are broken up. These guys are having problems.
The IoT paparazzi are out.
But we're moving off from partnerships to...
More scary stuff.
More scary stuff. Take a break from our light and happy news to terrify you again. All right. At DEF CON, my favorite show that I would never attend because I'm terrified of getting completely hacked or screwed over at some point in time. Sorry, y'all. But I do love you, and I love talking to all the people who do this. But there was a researcher who basically demonstrated malware that they could stick on any sort of speaker system and then use that. So they need physical or remote access to the device, but once it's on there, they can actually melt the speaker components by sending out these high-pitched frequencies and also possibly damage people and, I don't know, animals. They didn't test it on people or animals, so we're not sure how that damage would happen. But right. It wasn't good.
Yeah, and it's not just like smart speakers, as you said, any speaker. So a laptop speaker, your phone speaker, a Bluetooth speaker, headphones. I mean,
television. I mean, all kinds of. There's speakers everywhere.
Yeah. Like if we were going to use the word insidious, we could actually insert the frequency in this podcast and melt everybody's smart speakers. But we're not. Don't worry.
Well, we could do that originally. You would have to download the software. But yes, we could be insidious and play a terrifying signal. And I'll link this back to the mystery of Cuba, where we had U.S. diplomats in Cuba who had something happen with their hearing, their heads. I don't even know. Nobody knows.
I don't think we'll ever find the official story out.
It's like the Bermuda Triangle kind of thing. Don't know there, but keep an eye out on that. And then the other thing from DEF CON that I don't think it's funny. I just think it's a case of, oh, people, look at us, was this idea. I'm sure you guys saw that the Avaya desk phones now are vulnerable. What's interesting about it isn't that your Avaya desk phone is vulnerable, although go patch. It's that this is a vulnerability that is 10 years old. When it was found, Avaya actually issued a patch. What happened then is some point in time later, they forked the code for the phones and used the old unpatched version. So then they reintroduced the vulnerability all over again. Good news is they have a patch.
Version control, people, version control.
I just thought this was a perfect example. I picture it like cut and paste. You know, you're like,
yeah,
boop, boop.
yeah.
I'm going to put this here.
If you're dealing with code in, say, GitHub or your source code control system, whatever you use, and you've got 10 years worth of code for single devices or a line of devices, this kind of oversight is unfortunately going to happen from time to time. So,
outside of DEF CON, we also got news late last week about Huawei's new operating system. This is the Harmony OS, or Hongming OS, if you're in Chinese, speaking Mandarin. But they say they can switch over from Android, and this is a big deal because the U.S. government has decided that no Huawei, nowhere. It's just a short version of that, which means companies from the U.S., like Google, have to pull their stuff from Huawei. They can't work with them on anything, which means no Android. this is bad.
Yeah.
But Huawei says that's okay because we've got the Harmony OS, which is actually designed for the Internet of Things. And also smartphones, but it'll be smartphones, smart speakers, sensors, blah, blah, blah. And it makes me wonder, like, is this what Google's Fuchsia OS is? You know how we talk about that?
I was just going to say that because Huawei's been working on this since 2017. We've since found out, we know that this is their backup plan to Android. And as you said, it's going to actually start on smart TVs, but it is a microkernel, an open source microkernel, which Fuchsia is also a open source microkernel. Maybe it's not open source, but it is a microkernel that Google's been working on. And we still don't know a lot about that, but I suspect these are like mirror-like approaches to bring a standard core set of features and functions that can scale across any device by size or screen size as well.
Or maybe even no screen because it talks about it being on sensors. So that's pretty flexible.
Exactly.
And that makes sense because that's where we are going. We're going to need OSs that work across everything because otherwise developers are going to hate your platform.
Yep. Speaking of developers hating platforms, I did catch some interesting information that if and when Huawei brings this to phones or things that run Android today, that Huawei has a conversion program to convert an Android APK, which is basically a zip file of all the Android components for a program that will work on Harmony OS.
Ah, nice. Excellent. Yes. All right. And our final bit of news today is from the NRDC. This is an environmental NGO, and they protect animals, protect the environment, protect air, protect everything. What's not?
Somebody has to, so.
Yeah, we're not doing a great job. So they actually retained a company called Pacific Crest Labs to test the power consumption of smart speakers and video streaming devices. And as you can imagine, there are problems with energy efficiency. Generally, the research says, hey, these devices are pretty energy efficient. But when you link, for example, a smart speaker to a television, it causes its standby power and overall annual energy use to skyrocket. That's because basically the TV doesn't go to sleep. So they're saying, hey, maybe you can make the TV models go to sleep when they're connected to a smart speaker. Some people do this, some people don't. But I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer because I'm sitting here, because I've got a Chromecast plugged in and I've got it connected to my Google Assistant. I don't know if Google's one of those people.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a guideline that they're trying to get device makers to start following because they say the spike in energy consumption from the always listening bits could exceed $1 billion annually. The device makers could actually implement something that, that makes it more efficient, as you were saying, but even just give us a scheduling thing in the apps of these smart speakers that says, hey, we're pretty much asleep from like 10 at night till 6 p.m. Nobody's downstairs watching the TV. Can you just not be listening from 10 to 6 p.m.?
Yeah, exactly. And
that would do it.
There we go. They gave a chart full of on power versus standby power in a variety of devices. And some of them, surprisingly, the Apple HomePod consumes a lot of energy. So a on power mode in terms of watts, the Google Home is 2.2. The Amazon Echo is 2.4 watts. The Apple HomePod is 5.9 watts.
Mm-hmm.
Which, holy cow, what is it doing?
I don't know. I know it's a very heavy and hefty device. Not that has much to do with it, but I see as these devices get bigger, they seem to be using more power. Like the Google Home Mini, the smallest amongst this tested group is like 1.7 watts when it's on.
Yeah, but that's, 1.7 versus like, what is it, 2.4?
Almost 6. Yeah, 2.4 for the home. Yep.
Yeah. Oof. Okay, well, I don't know about that.
Unplug everything.
We are plugging in a lot more things. I thought we would stop plugging in quite so many things, but that is...
No, this is why I'm changing all my outlets to add like USB ports and such because I'm running out of outlets.
Well, and if you imagine something like the Wireless Power Consortium, like bringing the Qi power not just to like connected devices, but imagine they have an effort to put it in like kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not even aware of what has wires, you just set it in places. Imagine how that might skyrocket the use of things that need to be charged.
Well, I say put all those wireless charging bits under the floors and everything will just wirelessly magically charge.
You will be baked in RF all the time. Although
I might lose my hair and grow a third arm, but hey, everything's charged.
And you might be warmer.
That's
It could be like radiant heating.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's good for news. We didn't have a ton of great news this week. Actually, we had a ton of scary
Bad news. Yeah.
So let's go to the Internet of Things podcast hotline and get a question from one of our listeners. The IoT podcast hotline is sponsored by Affero. With the 5th largest IoT patent portfolio in the world, Affero provides a proven platform that doesn't risk your brand. Affero customers have experienced as much as an 80% reduction in time to market and 10x higher activation rates. Learn more at affero.io. All right. It's August, everyone's on vacation, but we haven't been getting as many voicemails. So if you would like to be entered to win an ecobee smart switch, give us a call with your questions. Or maybe nobody has questions. I don't know. We are at 512-623-7424.
I will say, halfway through the month, you have a really good chance of winning that ecobee.
Oh, yeah. And it's a good smart switch.
Yeah.
If you're into that sort of thing, go for it. So this week's question is from Brent, and it's a good one. Let's hear it.
Hello, this is Brent from Utah. I have an older home and a very small bathroom with no fan, and the humidity gets crazy. It goes up to 65% when someone takes a shower or bath. And I'm going to install a fan, but I'd love to have the fan run automatically until it reduces down to maybe 30% humidity, some step point. I think also that we'd want to be able to hit the fan and have it run for 15 minutes, or just turn the fan on and leave it running. So both the automatic sensing, turning it on, leaving it on until it drops, and also a way to trigger it if it's not even at that humidity, so I can get bad smells out of the way. Thanks for your help.
Oh, Brent, this is such a good question because Kevin has already done the research because he wanted to do the same thing.
I did half of it. I actually bought a product. I just didn't install it yet. Basically, you can go to your local Lowe's, Home Depot, etc., and check the shelves for bathroom exhaust fans that have integrated humidity sensors in them. Again, I bought one. I did not actually install it yet, so I can't tell you how well it works. But there's a range of these depending on the amount of air that you need moved, any features you want. Some have lights in them and such. And I found one that I kind of like better than the one I bought. It's a Newtone DC 110 CFM ceiling bathroom exhaust fan with the humidity sensor. It's $139. It has a small integrated light in it, which is just a nice add-on. And basically, I think this will do what you need it to do. And I say that because as I look at the specs, you can adjust the set point of humidity so that it's anywhere between 50 and 80%. And if the fan recognizes the humidity levels in that range that you set, it will automatically turn on for you. It will also stay on for a user adjustable 5 to 60 minutes once the set point is met. So once the humidity drops, say below 50%, if you want it set for the max, you can have it stay on for 5 to 60 minutes. And since it automatically goes on, you don't have to turn it on when there's high humidity. It just will do it for you. So I think that will really meet your needs. However, I know Stacy was looking at another potential option.
Yes, there are two. The first is if you want to make this sort of thing smart, you can buy a normal exhaust fan, install it, and then put a smart switch on it, and then buy a humidity sensor, and then connect those two. That's a lot of work, and you said you had an old home, so you may not have a neutral wire for your smart switch. So I found something even easier. You can buy an Aware Glow for about $90. They might even be $79 right now. Buy this thing. It's a indoor air quality monitoring plug. Plug in a dehumidifier, so you have to buy a separate little dehumidifier. And then when the humidity gets to a certain point that the Aware says is not great, and I think you can actually set that, it will actually turn on your dehumidifier for you and then turn it off either at a time setting or when the humidity is dropped below a certain level. That is the no install way, but it's going to be super easy. But then you have like a dehumidifier sitting in your bathroom. It doesn't address your automatic fan question exactly, because it's a dehumidifier only, then you're still kind of stuck with that problem.
Right, but it is simple, and that does not require any hub or anything.
Nope. It just requires a basic dehumidifier and a smart outlet that measures air quality.
Right. And if you went with the other option of a switch and humidity sensor,
you're looking at $100.
And I'm thinking you're going to need a hub because of the sensor.
Oh, yeah. You will need so you're really looking at like $200 plus an install. Plus, you've actually got to put the fan in. None of that includes the fan, the exhaust fan.
Yeah. A couple options.
There's some options depending on what you think you want and need and can afford or reasonably expect to do. As you can see, Kevin afforded something, but he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to it. It's been 3 years. My deal is if it's not done in 5 years, that's a problem.
Then you sell it at a garage sale?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so wait 2 years, Brent, and you can just buy my fan.
There you go. Okay. Well, this is great. Thanks, Kevin, for helping me out with the news. I would encourage everyone to stay tuned for Adam Smith of LightPoint, who is going to be talking about the brand new FIRA consortium, how it's secure, how it does location, and how other companies can assess what makes a good wireless technology, like how they know where they should be investing. It's going to be fun. Stay tuned for that, but first, a message from our sponsor. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Nutanix, and I have Sachin Vagani with Nutanix here to talk about the company. Hi Sachin, how are you doing?
Hi, Stacey. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So, Sachin, I associate Nutanix with hyper-converged infrastructure, but what is it specifically that you guys offer in the Internet of Things?
Stacey, we've created an IoT application platform. It is called Xi IoT. And specifically, it's an edge computing offering that allows users to deploy modern IoT applications at the edge. It lets them manage these applications literally at planet scale from a central point of control. And last but not the least, it enables users to do data processing across the edge in the cloud for IoT use cases.
Excellent. So what is Nutanix's core mission in the IoT?
Stacey, it's about getting insights out of raw data as soon as possible. We see enterprise IoT devices are going to create roughly 600 billion petabytes of information next year. This is compared to roughly 15 billion petabytes that's going to be created in all the public and private clouds combined. So if our users can get key insights out of this raw data as soon as possible and very close to where this data is created in the real world at the edge, the better off we'll be.
All right. So there's a lot of data and you've got to deal with it at the edge. So can you walk us through a customer story to illustrate this concept?
We recently worked with a smart cities customer, and they were thinking about deploying new type of cameras, license plate recognition cameras and AI cameras to figure out traffic violations or to track cars and so on. And we convinced them to use their existing cameras and all the data that they were already collecting and apply some AI processing on top of that data lake to get all those insights anyway without any more investment in devices or any more investment in time. So all in all, they could create this AI-based traffic management project. And instead of having to deploy new devices for it and it having to take roughly 18 months from start to finish, they could do it in roughly 3 months by applying software and AI techniques on top of data that they already had.
That sounds very cool. So if I wanted to use my existing data and devices to discover insights, where could I go to find out more about Nutanix?
Folks are welcome to visit us at nutanix.com/IoT, where we have many other case studies, and your listeners can also sign up for a free trial.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Adam Smith, who is Director of Marketing at LightPoint. Hi Adam, how are you today?
Hi Stacey, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Excellent. So we connected because LightPoint is a wireless testing firm, and you guys have tested all kinds of different wireless standards, and you recently joined the FIRA consortium. And I shouldn't say you, I should say your company. So before we get into FIRA, let's talk about why you guys joined the alliance and your kind of business case for doing so.
Yes, so we recently joined the FIRA Consortium. They're a relatively new organization, and we are a entirely wireless-focused company. And I like to say that if there's a product out there, whether it's consumer or industrial, we're testing the air interface in some capacity. What we look to do is we look to help companies bring devices to market and then ramp them into manufacturing. And that's both on the industrial and consumer side. So what FIRA is looking to do is actually put some structure and organization around a new technology. Well, it's actually kind of a little bit of a rehash of technology of ultra wideband. You may know this more as the 802.15.4 IEEE standard. So what FIRA is doing is putting together an ecosystem, bringing multiple players together to help bring some structure and organization and a certain way to certify products to make sure that they interoperate with each other.
Okay. So this is important, obviously, to you guys because this is your business, is testing these things. How many standards organizations do you guys think you're part of?
We're part of a few organizations. A lot of what LightPoint's business is has been historically in Wi-Fi. So we're an active member of the Wi-Fi Alliance today, and we're currently bringing Wi-Fi 6 to market as part of the certification of that standard as well.
Woohoo! We're not going to talk about that today, though. We are going to go back to FIRA. So the FIRA Consortium was started very recently by NXP, Assa Abloy, Bosch, and Samsung. And one of the things that it's saying that it can do for people is provide fine-ranging location. What does that mean?
This is unique, and it's actually one of the reasons why we're excited about this. Yeah, historically, when we think about wireless technology, we think about it as a over-the-air data pipe that you jam data through. And this is a little different. So this is not so much about how do I get gigabits of data through the air. This is more about how do I precisely position two devices relative to each other. And so this fine ranging is about knowing accurate positioning, if you will. So it's not so much about we've got megabits or gigabits per second going through the air. It's more about I can very accurately tell relative position, relative speed, relative direction of two devices that are talking to each other. And so this opens up some really interesting use cases. This technology is not looking to replace an existing technology. It's looking to enhance the types of things you can do in products moving forward.
All right. So I'm going to quibble with you just a little bit because I feel in the industrial IoT, in the enterprise IoT, location is a big deal. And I see all kinds of wireless location efforts, probably the most popular being Bluetooth. How is FIRA maybe better than Bluetooth for enterprise asset tracking?
I'm seeing the same thing. There's multiple technologies. I mean, even Wi-Fi with the 802.11az standard is looking at doing indoor positioning as well. So Bluetooth, certainly as they move forward into Bluetooth 5.1, is looking to enhance the capability that's already there today with the whole beacon and then client conversation that goes on there from a positioning point of view. FIRA, or if you will, the technology sitting underneath FIRA is ultra wideband, is quite unique in several different aspects. First of all, it's very, very, very wide bandwidth. So it's about 500 megahertz wide, and you compare that to Bluetooth, which is only a couple hundred kilohertz wide. So the wider bandwidth you have, the more precise you can be with position. And so what people are looking to achieve with ultra wideband is certainly less than 10 centimeter accuracy. I've heard some people trying to target as much as 1 centimeter accuracy.
That is super impressive accuracy, and it makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it comes out in pulses as opposed to creating this pipe between radios is definitely going to help with power consumption. So I'm excited. The other thing here is there's this idea of not just location tracking, but also secure access. I'm assuming this is why Assa Abloy is involved, but right now I might walk by my connected door locks and it'll open with Bluetooth. They're saying that this might work for that in both like consumer applications, but also in things like cars.
Yes, definitely have heard of this technology being used in the context of access to vehicles, access to buildings. One of the advantages of ultra-wideband here is that with the precise positioning, you can't be a person that's not trying to do good, that's sitting next to the car and basically do what's called a relay hack, where you rebroadcast the signal. So one thing that's unique about ultra-wideband is this concept we call time of flight. Just because you're rebroadcasting a signal and then the other radio receives it, you need to also match that up with the value that it sees from a time of flight point of view. So it knows that you're not spoofing the position. It knows it's you physically right there at the door of the car. It's not somebody hiding over in the bushes after you leave and rebroadcasting the signal.
So then the question becomes, you're experienced in the world of wireless. How do we determine if something like this is going to be a success? I feel like wireless standards pop up all the time, and some of them are amazing, and some of them just kind of die a slow death or a quick death, whichever. It's death.
Yeah, agree. I've seen this so many different times. I mean, the classic examples of ones that have been successful have been Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, at least in the consumer space. And, some of this is a little bit of the technology was waiting for an application and the application just hit a really sweet spot with the smartphone. I mean, as soon as the smartphone came out, pretty much Wi-Fi and Bluetooth have cemented their place in history and have done a really nice job moving forward of backwards compatibility. But what does it take for a new technology to get adoption? Because we're seeing all kinds of industrial IoT technologies out there today. And for me, it's kind of like no one tool is the best one out there. They're all just different tools in the toolbox. And depending on the millions of applications in the industrial space, one might be better than the other. So for ultra wideband in particular, it has some interesting advantages and it also has some things going against it. So one thing that's really nice about it is that it can operate technically in licensed spectrum, but it's operating under the FCC Part 15 limit, so it's allowed to operate there. So it operates somewhere, typically the devices we're going to see are going to be between 6 gigahertz and 8.5 to 10 gigahertz, which technically speaking, there's an overlap of licensed spectrum there. But because it is very wide bandwidth and very low power, other devices pretty much see it as a noise. They probably wouldn't even notice it. And then because it's wide bandwidth, it's not very susceptible to narrowband interferers. You're not going to jam the signal with a narrowband interferer because the energy is spread out over 500 plus megahertz of bandwidth. There's some interesting things about the physical layer part of the technology that will help its adoption. The thing that we're excited about is the fact that it opens up these new use cases. So you can actually, I almost think of this as like you're adding nerve endings to the Internet of Things because you can precisely know where something is. It's almost like now these sensors can touch and feel and see relative position to where they are. And it's not a technology that's looking to displace a different technology. Ultra wideband is not looking to displace Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It's looking there to enhance the use cases that can be done to products. So there's really exciting things that can be done from an AI point of view. Because the positioning is so accurate, there's some interesting things as well from a secure point of view. Because you can tell where a sensor is, you don't have to worry about some of these other things we've historically worried about intercepting signals and then decoding them and rebroadcasting them.
Okay, that is a lot. So let's break that down a little bit. So I'm going to use a fancy word that I hate trying to say on podcasts, but I'm going to go for it. With this idea of nerve endings, you're basically giving things proprioception, which is the sense of where you are in space. And you mentioned some of the things that you can do with that, but I'd be curious to see if you have ideas about taking that forward, what that means for, let's say, enterprise and industrial customers.
To be honest, this is one of these things where it's a new technology that enables use cases that personally I haven't even really spent much time thinking about yet. But I can certainly envision things in maybe a medical or industrial application where you're wearing some sort of identification badge that has this technology in it. And there's some sensor on a door and senses that you're walking towards it and you're authenticated to go in that door, so it opens. And then your colleague who's walking around the corner has their own badge and they're not authenticated. So when they walk past that door, it doesn't open. So it's somewhat of a new way of thinking about building access and security access. Certainly in the automotive space, this is being discussed in multiple ways. I mean, I've heard people talking about more and more we make the smartphone the center of our life. If this technology were to propagate into a smartphone, now your smartphone's your wallet, now it's also your car keys. There's some interesting use cases out there that I think are interesting. I think we'll see what happens moving forward.
Now, broadly, as a person who has seen many wireless standards, let's talk about success in the consumer realm versus the enterprise realm, because the consumer realm, it feels like that is everyone's holy grail, but I could be wrong. So what does it mean if you're pushing a wireless standard for consumer versus enterprise success? What do those look like? What are the impacts on the companies involved?
If we're talking about specifically around the IoT in the consumer space, frankly, what you want is your product to be adopted. And so what you're going to want to pick is a technology that has a high rate of adoption. And it depends on the type of product it is. If this is a consumer IoT device, almost certainly it's going to have a smartphone sort of tether. So this is why we see Bluetooth is so dominant in consumer IoT and Wi-Fi as well. So you're going to want to pick a technology that you're not going to have to force your way into the ecosystem. You want an ecosystem already built.
That makes sense. And in the enterprise space, it feels like there's already so many technologies and they're very purpose-built. So maybe this will be fine there. And what does success look like in the enterprise space?
Yeah, enterprise is a wild animal, at least from a wireless technology point of view, because there is no right answer. So if I look at, for example, why don't we just take these well-adopted consumer technologies and put them in the industrial space? One of the challenges are a lot of the consumer technologies that they're just designed so pragmatically. So Wi-Fi to me is this elegant technology that was really designed to be super robust in the fact that, oh, if a packet drops, just send it again. But from an industrial and enterprise point of view, maybe that quality of service doesn't at all match what you're looking to achieve. So the pragmatic approach in the consumer space probably doesn't apply so much in the enterprise space. And so that's where I see the applications of like private networks so that you don't, first of all, there's this whole licensed versus unlicensed spectrum. So if you set up a private network where nobody else can be on there, you make this nice and pristine, you can have a high quality of service there because you don't have packet collisions and things like that.
Okay. As someone who evaluates these things, what do you look for when trying to figure out which wireless standards are going to be successful?
I might answer this in two different ways because in a way, LightPoint is a little agnostic to the wireless technology. We want to enable our customers to put products in the marketplace, and we're not there to make judgment values on which technology is better than the other one. I want to help my customers get to market. That being said, certainly we need to choose where we spend our investment dollars onto which technologies. And so when we're evaluating from a product development point of view, where should we put our R&D dollars? We certainly have to make some judgment around that. And so what we try to do is build a platform. So we have a hardware platform. We try to build a platform that is flexible enough that we can drop different wireless personalities on it. So we design a flexible platform that can be programmed to be a different personality depending on which technology we've loaded into it. I hate the term software-defined radio, but if you will, that's what we are at the end of the day. Then from a software development point of view, clearly we prioritize based on where we think we see momentum, and we check our checks and we check our checks and our checks, and we work closely with customers and chipset companies. And back to the beginning of this, we work with some industry consortiums to see where we think the industry is going to be heading.
Got it. And I like this idea of wireless personalities. I'm trying to sit here and envision like little personalities for my favorite wireless standards. Given your view of the market, what are you excited about for the Internet of Things specifically coming up next? What is the next big technology I should be focusing on, for example?
I don't want to focus so much on what's the next big technology per se, because there's always going to be another technology. The way that we think about the wireless market in two different segments, there's the licensed spectrum technologies and the unlicensed spectrum technologies. The unlicensed spectrum technologies move very quickly. The barrier to entry is very low, and we see a bunch of these technologies coming out. I mean, most recently, things like Sigfox, LoRa in the industrial IoT space. And then we have the licensed spectrum where things tend to move much slower. It's hard to get significant changes in licensed spectrum, and they tend to be governed by not only do you have to purchase that spectrum from a government entity, but they're also typically working with standards bodies that move on a slower cadence than some of these unlicensed spectrums that can pivot pretty quickly. So if I look at what to look for moving forward, the thing I get excited about in the IoT is, of course, the sheer volume of devices. It's one thing to say consumer space, 7 billion people on the planet, if we can put a smartphone in everybody's hands, so that's a big market. But the IoT just kind of exponentially grows on top of that. And so for me, as a marketer in the company here, what we try to look for are high value add IoT devices. So we're looking for things that where quality of service does matter, where security, where safety, where things that where quality matters. That's where we tend to focus on the industrial space.
Okay, so that doesn't answer the question of what you're excited about.
I'm always excited to be constantly learning. So as we move into the 5G world here, I think 5G, it's a very generic topic here, but 5G working with multiple different technologies is going to be a pretty cool thing moving forward. It's hard for me to imagine we put a SIM card in every single IoT device, but some of the things that people are looking at with private networks and such, there's opening up some new business cases that we haven't seen historically in some of the previous generations of technology.
Okay, I agree with you. I'd look at like 5G plus like the CBRS band radio spectrum auction that we're thinking about and how to do something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have my own corporate network. What does that mean? In my career, I've never seen so much spectrum activity as we've seen over the last 2 years. It's just wild how much spectrum motion is going on right now, both in some exotic new spectrum and millimeter wave, and also even just extending some of the traditional sub-6 gigahertz. We're now looking at the quote-unquote 6 gigahertz unlicensed band. The FCC should be hopefully adopting either later this year into the middle of next year. So it just opens up new spectrum, more devices can operate, more networks, and makes the world go round. And we'll see, hopefully, well, maybe not hopefully, I don't know if I'm really sold on this, but we'll see more wireless radios.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Adam, thanks so much for coming on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stacey.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.